All right, welcome back. This is part two of our connective tissue notes. This part should be a lot shorter than part one, so hang in there. You're almost done, believe it or not. All right, so let's talk about cartilage for a minute. Cartilage is a connective tissue that is defined by having a jelly, rubbery matrix. And so, as where the other tissues we looked at so far, loose and dense connective tissues were defined by their fibers, their protein fibers, whether they had a few in a loose tissue or a lot in a dense tissue. Cartilage is defined by this gel matrix, and it's very, very rubbery, which makes it hard but not completely rigid like a bone. So it's hard but still flexible. And it's very, very strong too. It can put up with a lot of stresses. We see very few cells in your cartilage. And this is actually really important because you may know about this. Cartilage doesn't repair itself very well. So if you tear a cartilage, it's really hard to fix. In fact, if you look at people that have arthritis, most people with arthritis, it's caused by a wearing down or a damage to their cartilage in their joints. And so the bones start to rub together against each other because usually cartilage acts as padding. So when we look at cartilage, it is what we call avascular, which you might remember from the epithelial tissues means that it does not have any sort of blood vessels at all. And if you think about this, if you had blood vessels in the cartilage in your joints, so let's think about like your knee for a second. Your knee has a whole bunch of cartilage in there at the end of the bones for padding. If it had blood vessels running through it, every time you go for a run, every time you jump up and down, those blood vessels would break and you would just have these like bloody, bruised knees every time you did that. Obviously, we don't want that, so we have no blood vessels there. The downside, though, is because there's no blood vessels, cartilage can't really repair itself very well. It is it's unable to get energy in there and nutrients to make any sort of repairs. So the avascularity basically explains why people have a lot of problem with cartilage. We also find out that cartilage is not innervated, which means that it doesn't have any sort of nerve cells in it. And this goes back to the same thing. If you had nerve endings in your cartilage, every time you would jump up and down, your knees would hurt like crazy. And so this tissue, it kind of sacrifices itself sometimes just to protect your other tissues because it doesn't feel anything. All right, so there's three types of cartilage. Hyaline is your basic cartilage, and it's really weak compared to the other ones, but it's still pretty tough and rubbery compared to other tissues. This one, if we look at it, it's just made of these things called chondrocytes, which are cartilage cells. So the prefix chondro means cartilage, cyte means cell. And so these chondrocytes produce this gel matrix as their ground substance. They make it as the surrounding material, and that's pretty much all it is. And we find this basically, it's on the end of your bones. So in your ribs, for example, if you remember when we did the rat dissection, we had to cut through the cartilage next to the sternum in their rib cage. So right between your breastbone or sternum and the ends of your ribs is this cartilage that allows your rib cage to be strong but still flexible. And so you can go ahead and press on your chest and you can feel that it moves a little tiny bit, but it's still pretty tough. It almost feels like a bone, but not quite. Same thing with like the tip of your nose. The tip of your nose, if you start off the bridge of your nose and go down, it starts off as a hard bone, and then somewhere in there, it starts to become kind of flexible and rubbery. Once again, that's hyaline. The last place we find it is at the ends of all your long bones. So if you ever eat a piece of chicken, if you eat like a drumstick, you'll notice the ends sometimes pop off, and they're kind of this white rubbery material. There we go. That's hyaline. And so its job is to be very smooth, and it's to be very strong, but still flexible. By the way, interesting little fact, before you were born, as a fetus, your entire skeleton was made of hyaline. Just like a shark has a cartilage skeleton, we start off with cartilage. And the only cartilage that's left is in those places at the ends of the bones. Fibrocartilage is like an upgrade from hyaline. So we take the same gel matrix, the same chondrocytes, and then we add in collagen fibers. Because they're so strong, they make an even stronger tissue. If you look inside your knee is actually like a double-decker sandwich of cartilage. It is hyaline on the ends of the bones, and in between is this little pad called the meniscus. Sometimes people tear this. You might have heard of it before. The meniscus is made of fibrocartilage because all of your body weight is carried by the knees. In between your vertebrae, the intervertebral discs are also made of this. So when you hear about someone having a slip disc or a herniated disc, they're actually rupturing their fibrocartilage that holds their discs together. or sorry, their vertebrae together. The last one is called elastic cartilage, and this one is kind of like hyaline with an upgrade with more elastic fibers. So where fibrocartilage, we added collagen to make it stronger. Elastic cartilage, we add elastin fibers to make it stronger. Or sorry, not make it stronger, make it more flexible. And so this one is able to flap around and then go back to its regular shape. So like your ears, if you take your ears and like you bend them, you can feel it's made of cartilage, it's rigid, but you can bend it, flex it, twist it, and then it snaps back to its original shape. There's also something called the epiglottis in your throat, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. But it's also made of elastic cartilage. So here's hyaline. We're looking at a fetal skeleton. You can see gel matrix. There's chondrocytes, so there's little cells in between. Nothing else. Here's another picture of some hyaline. You can see all that kind of purplish, pinkish stuff is all the gel matrix, and all those little cells in there are the chondrocytes that make it. Here we go. Here's your meniscus of the knee, and you can actually see in this picture that we have collagen fibers embedded into the gel matrix to make it extra strong. Here's another picture of some fibrocartilage. Elastic cartilage, so we're looking at the ear. You can see that now we've added some elastin in to make it extra flexible. Still have chondrocytes, still have the gel matrix. And here's another picture of some elastic cartilage from the ear. Now, we talked about the epiglottis, and this picture is kind of gross. This is a human head that's been sectioned sagittally, almost mid-sagittally. And if you look very carefully, this is where your teeth would be. So these are your lips. Teeth would be back here. This is the tongue. The tongue goes all the way down into your throat, believe it or not. Here's the uvula. It's a little hangy ball thing that you see in the back of your throat. And then right over here, we have this little flap. This is called the epiglottis, and it's a little piece of tissue. It's made of elastic cartilage. And what it does is when it's sitting in the up position, it'll actually allow you to breathe. So it actually goes and acts as a flap that allows air to go down into your trachea, which is right here, into your airway. But when you swallow, the food comes down through here. It pushes down on this flap, covers the trachea, and goes down through this tube, which is the esophagus. So right here is the break point between those two tubes, and the epiglottis helps to cover them up and control it. That's why you can't drink or eat and breathe at the same time. Okay, last two, these are really easy. Osseous tissue. Anything that starts with OSS is going to relate to a bone. So os or osteo always means related to a bone. And so osseous tissue is just bone. If we look at osseous tissue, the thing that makes it special is that we have cells with a solid matrix. So the stuff around the cells is made of solid minerals like calcium with collagen in to reinforce it, and that gives it its strength. Very hard, very rigid, can't move, hardest tissue in the body. Blood tissue, on the other hand, is kind of like on the opposite end of that. Here we have red blood cells, we have white blood cells, we have platelets, but its matrix is liquid. It's just plasma. So it's as where osseous tissue has a completely solid matrix, here we have completely liquid. There's no protein fibers at all in blood, and so that's the other giveaway for blood. So here's what your bone tissue looks like, and this is really cool. You can actually see all those little dots around that central circle. Those little dots are all of our bone cells. So here we go. So this is a blood vessel, and then all these little dots, each little dot here is a bone cell, an osteocyte. And all this yellow stuff is the matrix that they produce. That's the solid mineral matrix, the collagen. Here's another look at some bone. So this is a closer up view, and you can see all the solid material in between the cells. And here's another one, and you can actually see all those little dark lines are canals. They're little tiny areas that allow the cells to actually transmit fluids back and forth, and that's how the cells are able to stay alive. Blood tissue, if you notice, there's cells, but there's a lot of empty space. And so here's actually a better picture of some blood. In between the cells, nothing but liquid plasma. There's a big purple cell, that big purple blob in the middle of this tissue happens to be, there it is. This is a white blood cell. All the rest of these are red blood cells. And these little tiny, tiny dots, like there's one right over here, those are actually platelets. Okay? And so, as you can see, liquid tissue. Here's another picture. This is great. This is actually the best picture I have. Liquid matrix, lots of red blood cells, a few white blood cells, and these little tiny, tiny purple dots are platelets. Great. So let's look at the review. This is where we're going to bring it home. So connective tissue, the things to know. Matrix is the most important thing. There's tons of it. It tells you what the tissue does. If I told you a tissue had lots of collagen fibers on a line, dense, regular, strong in one direction, you get the idea. The cells, basically, they're just here to make the matrix. It's very diverse. We have everything from blood to bones to tendons in here. Very, very different stuff, very different functions. There's 5 types. We talked about those before. Make sure you know what they all are. And that's it. Congratulations. You survived to the end of the connective tissues. Thank you. Good luck. If you have any questions, please contact me.